Yeah, no, we're talking about.
Yes, it's okay. This is what I was curious to see is who would start eating and who wouldn't.
My grandma.
And my grandma.
For sure.
I had a hunch, didn't I, that the fire types would just dive in.
Yep.
You know, there's a little bit of, you know, other things that go into that too, but I mean the fire types are like, oh, let's
We're lucky we waited until we got back to the table.
So, you know, this is what I love. This is definitely my air water side. It's just kind of, let's see how things happen. Let's see how things go. You know, if you plant, you know, the air side of me wants to plan things out too, but in the end I find out, hey, what the heck, you know, it happens really, it's all really fun when you just let it happen. So, for the sake of Chef so nicely putting things in order for us, fire types do whatever you want, okay? The rest of you, if you'd like to join us in order, you're certainly welcome to. You know, next time I think I'm going to try this by sampling the wine first. I think my talk will be totally different. I'll try that next time. Okay. So our first wine that Tracy did the wine pairing for us. And as she said, there's going to be a few accompanying characteristics and there's going to be a few differing characteristics. So in the worksheet you'll see we were reminded of the flavors. And so in this one I definitely have noticed the sweet flavor. This is the Parley Lake wine, which is, Parley Lake is an orchard and vineyard and winery just a few miles away. And so this does have, I believe, from what I recall, it does have apple and pear. So it definitely does have sweet notes to it. Some characteristics that are natural to apple and pear is when they are raw, they are actually more airy. They have air tones to them as far as they're light and crisp, which is very airy. And when you think of apples, they're harvested in the late summer or fall. So that's an air season as well. Pears are also naturally airy and light. But then when you cook an apple or a pear, it turns very moist and it gets sweeter. So it actually adapts, it gets more earthy and more watery in characteristic. So here we have wine, which is obviously fermented and prepared as such. The sugar tones come out more. And so this to me is certainly watery. It's not as dry as what I would consider an air wine. So very nice match. What do you think of the spring rolls? I only found out about the menu just yesterday. And one thing that I found very interesting, and it occurred to me on our way home, is that Chef had prepared the spring roll, which if you have any of these ingredients by themselves, it would be just a salad, right? And if anyone has tried to make spring rolls, it's very challenging with the rice paper and to make them tight and everything. And to me, that's very characteristic of water. Water needs a container. Unless it's frozen, it needs a container to be contained, right? So I don't even know if Chef realized this, but it's very much characteristic of water to have a container, to have a wrapper. So that's one thing that I noticed. Having a sauce is a great accompaniment. It's chicken. Having a sauce is a great accompaniment and definitely a water characteristic, being saucy. And something that you'll notice in each of these dishes, which I thought was very neat, especially in the culture that we live. Okay, so we're out west, right? We're not in Minneapolis. So most of us are meat eaters, right? Yeah. I say all of us probably are meat eaters. Yeah. So I thought it was really neat that Chef had made each sampling with some kind of meat. Because a lot of times when I teach and people know that I talk about health and wellness and they see me that you're vegetarian, aren't you? And they say kind of disdainfully sometimes, like, you're going to make me be a vegetarian. I'm told that my airiness and water has to be contained within this area to be in camera. So another pure example of air and water just doing. So as far as meat and vegetarian, I'm not a vegetarian. There are times where I'll take a break from meat and allow my digestive system to have a break. But I think it's really neat how each dish was prepared with a different kind of meat so we can experience that as well. So the spring rolls were made with chicken, which is a very light kind of meat. And to me, water can be light and dense. You think of gaseous, it's really gassy, or it can be dense as in water or ice. Shall we discuss the rabbit confit?
Yeah.
I think it was fabulous.
Big emotion.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, having air tendencies myself, I try to stay away from or be mindful when I'm eating air food. But as Chef said, that he did, and he does focus on balancing the elements and the characteristics of his food, which I think he did very, very well here. And I'll point out something that I don't usually care for personally, a smoked rabbit or a smoked chicken. But I think because what I'm sensing is that having something smoked has more of an air or an earth characteristic, is more earthy. Even though smoke goes up in the air, it has some kind of earthy characteristic. And I'm getting nods, so that's positive. It's an observation kind of thing. It's not I'm right, you're wrong, you're right, I'm wrong. It's what are we observing? But I noticed in this rabbit, the smokiness balances out well with the lightness of the cracker, or it's not a cracker, a pastry. I want to call it the proper name. It's a pastry. And the filling here, or in the middle layer, is actually a parsnip mousse, which parsnips, as you probably know, grow in the ground. So it's actually a very earthy vegetable, but it's made in a very airy manner. So isn't that interesting? So there's so many balancing characteristics of this one little treat. What do you all think?
Very good.
Anyone notice the airiness of the wine? Yeah. Very, very nice.
I'll make an observation that being who I am, if I was to eat that stuff by the time I got home,
Just these things.
yeah. No, not just these, but a meal of that.
Oh,
If I was eating air and water by the time I got home, I'd be eating again. My body would just rip through it.
so we had an observation by a fiery person will have a very active digestive system, and so they tend to eat denser things by nature. And so my husband, a very fiery, earthy type, was mentioning that if you were to eat a meal of just these lighter type things, then you'd be hungry very soon. And I can see why that would be. I noticed when I started drinking this wine, so when you have too much of one characteristic, you have an imbalance, right? So if you get too much fire, you have a fiery imbalance, you have too much. Well, I noticed something right away, and I wasn't just kind of doing this with the wine, I just kind of drank it, and it almost like flew down my throat, and I kind of went like that, and it's just an interesting thing to notice, as someone with air characteristic, that the air wine just like kind of took me over, like, whoa, that's airy. This is probably not a wine that I would, I might drink it because it pairs something with something, but it's not one that I necessarily enjoy. A person who might enjoy it is someone who has a lot of earth characteristics because it is balancing. People with a lot of earth like the lighter qualities of it. It is a very smooth white wine for its airiness. It's very smooth. Another airy type of wine that I would think of, or they call it a varietal, would be a Chardonnay, which has very dry characteristics.